3 days after my daughter laughed at the handmade quilt I spent 9 months creating for her unborn baby, federal investigators placed her husband in handcuffs while she watched. What she did not know was that the country club where it all happened belonged to me. The funny thing about people who look down on you is that they usually never bother to learn who you really are. My name is Evelyn Carter. For most of my life, people saw me as nothing more than a cafeteria worker. I wore an apron, served meals, cleaned tables, and went home smelling like coffee and dish soap. That was enough for most people to decide exactly how much respect I deserved. Unfortunately, my daughter became one of those people. The trouble started at her baby shower. The event was held at an exclusive country club outside New York City. The place was beautiful. White tents covered the lawn. Waiters walked around carrying expensive appetizers. And guests arrived in luxury cars that probably cost more than my yearly salary. My daughter, Madison, was 7 months pregnant and looked happy. She wore a designer dress and moved comfortably among people who had spent their entire lives surrounded by wealth. Standing beside her was her husband, Connor Whitmore. He came from an old money family and worked at his father's insurance company. Everything about him screamed success. Expensive watch, perfect smile, tailored suit. His mother, Victoria, organized the entire shower and made it very clear that I was a guest, not family. When it came time to open gifts, designer boxes filled the room. Luxury baby furniture, expensive strollers, high-end blankets, and gift cards worth hundreds of dollars. Then Madison opened my gift. Inside was a quilt, but it was not just any quilt. For 9 months, after finishing my shifts at the senior center where I worked, I sat at my kitchen table sewing every night. Each square came from a piece of Madison's childhood. Her baby blanket, her favorite Halloween costume, her 5th birthday dress, 30 years of memories stitched together for the next generation of our family. I thought she would cry when she saw it. Instead, she looked embarrassed. She glanced at her mother-in-law and forced a laugh. "Mom, we registered at Pottery Barn." The room became awkwardly quiet. Before I could explain what the quilt meant, Connor smirked. "Well, your mom works in a cafeteria. What did you expect?" A few people laughed. Not loud laughter, the kind of laughter people use when they want to fit in. Madison did not defend me. She simply tossed the quilt onto the gift table and reached for the next present. That hurt more than anything Connor could have said. I sat there for several minutes pretending not to care. Then I stood, walked over to the table, picked up the quilt, folded it carefully, and left. Nobody stopped me. Nobody apologized. Nobody noticed. Back in my apartment, I placed the quilt on my kitchen table and stared at it for hours. What made the situation painful was not Connor's behavior. It was realizing how ashamed my daughter had become of where she came from. She had forgotten the tiny apartment where we lived after her father died. She had forgotten the years I worked double shifts to keep food on the table. She had forgotten every sacrifice that built the life she enjoyed. And she had no idea who I really was. You see, 25 years earlier, after becoming a widow, I bought a small rundown property with every dollar I had. I repaired it myself. Then I bought another, and another. Over the years, while everyone assumed I was struggling, I quietly built a real estate portfolio. By the time Madison married Connor, I owned dozens of properties worth millions. I never told her. I wanted her to learn the value of hard work before she learned the value of money. Instead, she learned how to judge people by appearances. The morning after the baby shower, I visited my attorney. Then I hired a private investigator, not because of the quilt, because something about Connor never made sense. His salary was decent, but his lifestyle was extraordinary. Luxury vacations, sports cars, designer everything. The math did not add up. 2 weeks later, the investigator called. The truth was worse than I imagined. Connor had been stealing insurance premiums from elderly clients. Instead of placing their payments into legitimate company accounts, he redirected the money into secret accounts he controlled. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had disappeared. Worst of all, many of the victims were retirees who believed they had active insurance policies. If tragedy struck, they would discover they had no coverage at all. Everything Connor owned was built on stolen money. I spent 3 days reading through the evidence. Each page made me angrier, not because of what he did to me, because of what he did to vulnerable people who trusted him. Many of them reminded me of the seniors I served meals to every day, people who worked hard their entire lives, people who deserved protection, not exploitation. I turned everything over to state investigators. An official case was opened immediately. Within weeks, authorities confirmed every detail. The evidence was overwhelming. An arrest was coming. During that time, Madison called me constantly. At first, she wanted to apologize for the baby shower. Then her messages became desperate. Connor was acting strangely. Investigators had visited his office. His father was furious. Nobody would tell her what was happening. For the first time in years, she sounded scared. I still said nothing. Some lessons have to reveal themselves. 5 days before the arrest, I made a request. I asked investigators to wait until Saturday. I wanted Madison to see the truth with her own eyes. And I wanted it to happen at a place that meant something. The country club. The same country club where she humiliated me. The same country club where Connor mocked me. The same country club that secretly belonged to me. Saturday arrived. Madison showed up first. She looked exhausted and confused. Connor arrived shortly afterward, followed by his mother. The tension was immediate. Everyone demanded answers. I invited them into the main dining room and waited until they were seated. Then I spoke. This property belongs to me. The silence was incredible. Connor laughed. Victoria laughed. Madison just stared. I explained that I owned the club along with dozens of other properties across New York. Millions of dollars in assets. Years of investments. A lifetime of work. Nobody said a word. Then the front doors opened. Investigators entered. The look on Connor's face changed instantly. The confidence disappeared. Fear replaced it. An agent approached him and calmly explained the charges. Insurance fraud, financial theft, exploitation of elderly clients. The room exploded into chaos. Victoria started shouting. Connor claimed everything was temporary. He insisted he planned to return the money. He blamed stress. He blamed business pressure. Then he blamed me. According to Connor, I was jealous. Jealous. The word sounded ridiculous. A man who built his life on theft was accusing me of envy. Madison looked at him as if she had never seen him before. For the first time, she heard exactly how many elderly people had been harmed. For the first time, she understood where their lifestyle came from. For the first time, she saw the truth. When the handcuffs clicked around Connor's wrists, she did not defend him. She simply sat there in shock. After the investigators left, Madison stayed behind. The country club was silent. Eventually she looked at me and asked why I never told her about the money. The answer was simple, because I wanted her to become someone who respected people regardless of their income. Instead, she became someone who measured worth through appearances. She cried harder than I had ever seen. Not because Connor was arrested, because she finally understood what she had thrown away. The quilt was never just fabric. It was love. It was history. It was family. Everything she had been too embarrassed to value. In the months that followed, her entire life changed. She filed for divorce. She moved into one of my apartment buildings. She got a job with my property management company and started at the bottom. No special treatment. No shortcuts. She learned the business one step at a time. And she worked harder than I ever expected. Meanwhile, I made another decision. I sold the country club. Not for profit, for purpose. The property was transformed into affordable housing for senior citizens. The project included community spaces, healthcare services, and affordable apartments for retirees living on fixed incomes. I named it Harper Commons after one of the elderly victims Connor had stolen from. 8 months later, the grand opening took place. Families celebrated, residents moved into their new homes, and standing beside me was Madison. No designer handbags, no expensive jewelry, just honest work, tired eyes, and a baby girl in her arms. She named that baby Evelyn, my name. Near the end of the ceremony, she quietly asked about the quilt. Do you still have it? I told her I did. Then she asked if one day her daughter could have it. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman standing in front of me was not the same person who laughed at my gift. Life had humbled her. Work had changed her. Pain had taught her what money never could. One day I told her, when you are ready, years from now, that little girl will inherit the quilt. Not because it is valuable, not because it is rare, but because it carries a lesson stitched into every square. Never judge a person by their job title. Never confuse wealth with character. And never underestimate the quiet people who spend their lives building something meaningful while the world is too distracted to notice. Because sometimes the woman serving lunch owns the building. And sometimes the gift everyone laughs at turns out to be the most valuable thing in the room.